Beaming out across the galaxy, this is where conspiracy on the wild side meets the perspective of a lifetime. This is the Free Zone with your host, Freeman.
Hello and welcome to the Free Zone. Well, we have moved into our modern world and we're trying to catch up. I think it's going faster than any of us could ever possibly have considered, but that's life on planet Earth. Or is it? How do we figure out global politics when we might be dealing with more than one globe? Will Trump disclose Antarctica discoveries to start a new economic boom? Well, we're going to discuss all this tonight with Dr. Michael Salla. He's an internationally recognized scholar in international politics, conflict resolution, and U.S. foreign policy. He's taught at universities in the USA and Australia. He's more popularly known as the pioneer in the development of exopolitics and the Exopolitics Institute, which is the study of the main actors and institutions, political processes associated with extraterrestrial life. Now, his new book is U.S. Navy's Secret Space Program and Nordic Extraterrestrial Alliance. This is right up our alley. I've been dying to talk to you, so thank you so much for coming and sharing this time with us, Dr. Salla.
Aloha, Freeman. It's great to be here and very happy to talk about these incredible changes that are coming our way.
It's going to come so fast. I mean, 11 days, 12 days of Trump, and the world has changed already. It's something else that's going on right now. And I don't think, many people have a very clear picture of the policies and the people of what Trump is doing. I mean, everything screams Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. If you're looking at all of the mainstream press about Bannon, about Trump, about any of his selections. And at the same time, we have mysteries beyond mysteries going on in Antarctica. And we're trying to figure out how this all pulls together. So let's start with a little Trump politics, so you and I, and discuss. We'll work our way towards the extraterrestrial civilization.
Sure. Well, I think the big thing to really address with Trump, of course, you raised that, is, there's a really major dichotomy between how the mainstream media has been describing him versus the alternative media. And, when you look at that dichotomy, I mean, either you come away convinced that this guy's a fascist who is going to really kind of like ruin America and take us into the dark ages, or, he's a catalyst for major changes because he is outside of the kind of power elite that have been manipulating the system for decades. So, it really is that, for everyone that still is trying to figure out who Trump is, I think it's really important to look at the alternative narrative. I mean, because that's the key here. Because if you just buy into one narrative, I think you're going to only have half of the picture. Because I think in a way, he's kind of both things. That he really is both a catalyst for huge change, but he's also, someone that truly is a kind of like an American nationalist that is going to really push America's case and do it in a very autocratic way that's going to kind of, rub a lot of people up the wrong way. So, and once you kind of have that more balanced perspective, I think we can appreciate, this is a man that is really going to change America fundamentally. And personally, I think that some of the changes he's going to bring about are going to really be of great benefit.
Well, he brought Elon Musk into the mix, and we are starting to look at our future. No matter how much we deal with the political structure and the global politics of everything, we can see this new world arriving right behind everything or ahead of everything. I guess it's ahead of everything once we get to the breakaway civilizations and understandings. But, transhumanism, extended life, these type of augmented reality homes, smart homes, and things of this nature are something that Trump's going to have to deal with.
Well, there's kind of different layers of secrecy concerning these technologies. Of course, smart homes, kind of like electrically powered cars, new energy. This is kind of like the outer band. Like this is very much open source information that many people have been exposed to over the last decade or so. People like Elon Musk trying to transform the automotive industry with these all-electric vehicles. The growth in solar generated homes, the improvements in kind of like solar energy and alternative energy. These are things that people are quite aware of. But I think that that deeper layer of secrecy, this is the one that I think Trump is going to really make some big changes in, because it really is, when we're looking at the secrecy system in a country like the US, we really need to appreciate that it is very much like the onion, the proverbial onion, with all these different layers of secrecy. You got the outer band of secrecy, concerning some of these kind of like more advanced technologies that could revolutionize the oil industry, the power industry, the health industry, pharmaceuticals, and so forth. And these are coming. This is kind of like being transformed as we have kind of people in the open source, making breakthroughs. But I think that, when we go beneath that into this world of kind of highly classified or sensitive compartmented information, special access projects, this is where information still has not bubbled up into the open source literature. This is where people like Elon Musk and Virgin Atlantic and all of these different kind of innovative companies or pioneers, they're not exposed to that level of information. Here we're talking about military programs, corporate programs that are kept under this veil of secrecy. And it goes way down in terms of what's happening in Antarctica, what's happening in secret space programs, what's happening with extraterrestrial life. Each of these involve different layers, but I think the layer that is going to really really emerge into the surface is what's happening in Antarctica.
Now let's talk about that for a minute, because we're looking at the 200th anniversary of our current discovery of Antarctica, and from the Russian polar expedition back in the 1800s. Now we have this line of people. I mean, we've looked at the fact that Herman Hesse, Goering, now John Kerry, Buzz Aldrin, and even the patriarch of Russia going down to Bellenhausen and hanging out with the penguins in Antarctica. I mean, what is going on when we have the Secretary of State? We have people that have been to the moon and a patriarch. I mean, this sounds more like an ambassador visiting someone than it does somebody going down to check for, say, climate change.
Well, as far as I can best understand what's been going on in Antarctica, we can kind of begin with the discoveries down there made by the Nazis in the late 30s, 38, 39, when they went down there. One of the things that I've found with the whistleblowers is that the Nazis were able to access these submerged waterways, these huge kind of underground rivers in Antarctica with these enormous submarines, and were given information about where to go down these waterways so that they would access these enormous underground caverns. And that's the important thing to keep in mind about Antarctica. What you see on the surface, what you see on Google Earth and so forth, is really not where the action is. It's underneath the ice. It goes down as far as 2 miles, and underneath the ice is where all the good stuff is hidden. And the first people to access that were the Nazis in 38, 39. And then throughout the Second War, they just kind of poured a massive amount of resources into Antarctica using their submarine fleets, being able to build out these underground caverns where they were making these discoveries throughout the Second World War. of course, what happened after the war. The Nazis in Antarctica survived. They basically built a breakaway civilization in Antarctica. Then in the 1950s, they reached an accommodation with the US military industrial complex. Agreements were reached. And so basically, then you had a lot of corporations, US corporations, beginning to work with the Nazis in these huge underground caverns, as much as 2 miles under the ice. All of this, of course, was being done without the public knowing about it. So this kind of continued in that vein right up until around 2001. And that's when there was a major change. I think what happened was that a decision was made that eventually the world would be given the truth about Antarctica, and so that's when you had the big announcements coming from the Russians and others that there had been this enormous anomaly discovered in Lake Vostok, basically a mile under the Antarctic ice, and that there was this huge underground anomaly that was basically could be detected using magnetic detectors, and they could see that Lake Vostok, at one corner of it, there was this kind of like metropolis-sized magnetic anomaly, which suggested that this was an underground city. And this is really where I think things began to change, because essentially then scientists and archaeologists were given access to these underground facilities, or to this discovery in Antarctica. So exactly why it was 2001 that the decision was made to open up these kind of major underground discoveries in Antarctica, we can speculate about that. But as I kind of like go through the different whistleblower testimonies and go through the public information that exists out there, open source information, it really is around that period, 2001, that what's been in under Antarctica for a long, long time, that the Nazis had access to. Now, all of a sudden, scientists, archaeologists were being given access to that. And that's when you had more and more of these people, scientists, being allowed to go down into that area under Lake Vostok, and other parts of Antarctica where significant discoveries were made under the ice. And so you had excavations beginning. And I think that this is basically what's been happening for the last 15 years now. Excavations have been underway, and they've reached the point where now in 2016, with all of these VIPs going down there, we've reached the point of no return. This stuff is going to be announced. The world very, very soon is going to wake up to major scientific announcements that there have been discoveries of a flash frozen civilization under as much as 2 miles of ice in Antarctica, that this civilization had very advanced technologies, and that these technologies actually are so advanced that some of them will actually be very helpful for modern humanity in dealing with a lot of its energy problems, health, medical problems, and so forth.
I want to see benefits come from all of that. I want to see an economic boom, a renaissance of humanity, and a movement to true life on planet Earth instead of all the squabbling that we're seeing. And when we're dealing with a global political structure, and some people are holding more of this knowledge than others, and then you throw in extraterrestrials, and this puzzle then, as you might say, becomes 3D. Well, I'm curious on how we vet the whistleblowers that come forward with this information, because most of the time there's very little physical evidence to back claims. So what do you do with when you start receiving all this knowledge? And thinking of whistleblowers, how is Corey Good?
Well, with whistleblowers, typically what happens is that they come forward, they have an incredible story to share, and there's not any hard evidence or documents to support what they're saying. So, Corey Good came forward in early 2015, and he was saying a lot of remarkable things, including what was happening in Antarctica. And there was a lot of circumstantial evidence supporting what he was saying, and I wrote about that on my website and the book, the 2015 book, Insiders Reveal Secret Space Programs and Extraterrestrial Alliances. So as best as I could determine based on what different whistleblowers were saying and available public documents, Corey Good was telling the truth. But there was no direct documentary evidence really supporting what he was saying until we had a new whistleblower come forward, and this was William Tompkins. And what was really unique about him was that he actually had a lot of documents supporting what he was saying. And in addition, through the Freedom of Information Act, I've been able to get access to more documents actually substantiating key elements of what he was saying. And the important thing about William Tompkins is that his information matched what Corey Good had been earlier saying to a T, so much to the extent that now I'm convinced, along with Corey, that a lot of the information he had accessed while he says he was in this secret space program from 1987 to 2007, a lot of that information was actually based on debriefing and briefing documents that William Tompkins was directly involved in from 1942 to 46. So here we have, with William Tompkins, someone whose testimony directly corroborates what Corey has been saying, and both say the same thing when it comes to Antarctica, that there was a breakaway Nazi civilization that was established there, that had built a secret space program, that was being helped by these reptilian extraterrestrials and other extraterrestrials, that they had access to ancient artifacts that were basically hidden in the layers under the ice of Antarctica. And that eventually the US military-industrial complex reached agreements and began to cooperate with them. So that gives me a lot of kind of confidence that what Corey has been saying about Antarctica is very accurate, which means that then we kind of fast forward to the present era, because the thing here is that, not only does Corey Good have a lot to say about the history of Antarctica, he is, as far as I can tell now, the only person who publicly is talking about having witnessed these ancient artifacts in Antarctica, the modern excavations that are underway and that are going to be soon released, that Corey has been given access to this and has been taken down to Antarctica from his secret space program collaborators, who are basically feeding him or giving him access to this information because they want the world to know the truth. Because what is going to happen with these upcoming announcements about Antarctica is that it's going to be highly filtered. We're not going to get the full story of what was discovered in Antarctica. The most important element here is the extraterrestrial element has been removed, that Corey was taken down there. He says that in January of this year, only last month, early January, he was taken to Antarctica to these very sites that are being excavated under 2 miles of ice by these archaeologists, and that he witnessed an area that had not yet been accessed by the teams of Western scientists and archaeologists excavating down there. And he saw, what these artifacts involved, and they involved a flash frozen extraterrestrial civilization that had been doing hybrid experiments with the human population, producing all kinds of hybrid humans, that they had advanced technologies, that they had huge motherships that were as much as 30 miles across, that this was all buried under the Antarctic ice. But nearby, the areas where the scientists and the archaeologists were excavating and were writing papers and preparing for official announcements where there would be documentaries and so forth released, these same areas had been basically sanitized of the entire extraterrestrial component. So as far as the public is going to be concerned, when this is revealed, the public's going to learn that there was a flash frozen civilization in Antarctica with kind of advanced technologies, but this was very much a terrestrial civilization, nothing to do with extraterrestrials, and that'll be the kind of like the way in which things begin to open up.
Right. And people are finding saucer-shaped things there in Antarctica, along with what seem to be ancient civilizations and cities on Google Maps.
Well, this is the big thing, Freeman. What we're seeing on Google Maps, that's not where the real action is. The real action is, at least a mile to 2 miles under the Antarctic ice. Google Maps doesn't give us access to that.
Right. Now, I want to add, just for the listeners and for yourself, that my father was on Killer One submarine in the Navy with Jimmy Carter, the only president to ever claim to have seen a UFO. I will have to dig this out when we go on our break, but as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I think I have a Masonic document from my father for Antarctica. I'm going to dig that out when we go on the break for the next hour, and I'll have that ready for us. But my father suddenly laid on me, Michael, one day that, yeah, I chased flying saucers for the government. And I'm saying, what? I'm in college at this point. And he's like, yes, I was in Project Blue Book. I was stationed on a South Sea island, and I manned 4 radar dishes. And anytime a saucer would fly by, it was my job to report it. And so here I am thinking, oh my God, so saucers are real is, the only thing I could get from my dad. And he was absolute. So we've got this concept of the Navy, the connection with politics and Jimmy Carter. We've got the UFO connection all wrapped up with my dad and Freemasonry. Now, Barack Obama put Ray Mabus in charge of the U.S. Navy. And we're going to start getting to your new book here because just to go to a Nostradamus quatrain, and the idea that the Antichrist will rise when Mabus dies. In a quatrain of Nostradamus, he names, and everybody tried to figure out throughout years and years, who was Mabus? And the next thing I know, Obama puts Ray Mabus in charge of the U.S. Space Force, which, is the U.S. Navy program. So let's talk about your book here a bit, the U.S. Navy's secret space program and the Nordic Extraterrestrial Alliance.
Sure. Well, the Navy really is the service in the US that has the most advanced space program. The Air Force has its own program, but not nearly as advanced as the Navy, because the Navy, throughout the Second World War, had these spies embedded in Nazi Germany, and these spies were reporting back everything that they had learned about the Nazis' advanced aerospace programs, where they were developing up to 30 different prototypes of flying saucers, anti-gravity vehicles. So after the Second World War, the Navy then begins to secretly begin designing their own flying saucer fleets, and the Navy kind of took the approach of building battle groups. That the Navy's approach to building a space program was the same way in which they approached the problem of projecting naval power onto the high seas. You don't build like in the kind of 20th century, like in the 19th century or the early 20th century. The dominant idea was that you build like this super battleship, like the Bismarck or whatever, and it can go out there and do whatever it would do on the high seas, and that was how the navies of the world projected power. But what happened in the evolution of naval doctrine was that around the Second World War, that this had evolved into these aircraft battle groups where you have an aircraft carrier surrounded by these various support ships, cruisers, destroyers, mine ships, submarines, that would all be integrated so that this battle group had the best chances of being able to project the Navy's power into the high seas. Well, the Navy took that same idea and just used it for thinking into the 21st century in terms of, well, how are we going to project naval power into space? So they came up with the idea of these naval battle groups, or naval space battle groups, where you would have these space carriers, with space cruisers and space destroyers and so forth, and that these battle groups would be built, and that this would be how the Navy would project its power into space. And so that took a lot of designing, a lot of work, and of course, this is where the testimony of William Tompkins comes in, and he kind of describes how the process evolved and his involvement with it, and the role that Nordic extraterrestrials played in all of this, because these Nordic extraterrestrials really were trying to assist the Navy, and they were doing it behind the scenes in a covert way, where they were kind of helping engineers, designers with ideas and giving them direct information through whatever means they could, through Nordic extraterrestrials who had infiltrated corporations or the military-industrial complex, that they would help the Navy designers and engineers and architects and so forth basically build these space battle groups so that they would be very functional, and that ultimately they would be able to work with the US, so with the Nordic extraterrestrials, so that the Nordics, at the 1950s and even earlier, we go back to the LA incident from 1942, that the Nordics have been quietly helping the US Navy so that it can develop a space program that could rival what the Nazis were doing, because the Nazis had developed their own program in Antarctica, but they were being helped by these reptilian extraterrestrials who really are a kind of very imperialistic race and are the kind of like the enemies, really, or the opponents to these Nordic extraterrestrials. So in a way, the Second World War became a proxy war between these two different extraterrestrial groups. One, the reptilians, overtly helping the Nazis, or very directly intervening, whereas the other group, the Nordic extraterrestrials, kind of more covertly behind the scenes, helping the US, the British, and the Allies, and that continues to the present day. And so the book basically describes this history beginning from the World War II up to the present, where the Navy today is still being helped by the Nordics and is ready to reveal the truth of its existence to the world, and that's why people like William Tompkins and Corey Goode have been given the green light to come forward.
Now, would these Nordics be subterranean or coming from extraterrestrial places?
Well, actually, what we know is that they're both. We have Nordic extraterrestrials from other worlds, and people have heard a lot about the Pleiadians, and that's one of the locations where these Nordic extraterrestrials come from. But there's also an inner Earth civilization, actually multiple inner Earth civilizations, and some of these are very Nordic looking. The blue eyes and the white hair and the very pale skin, which is what you would expect from a civilization that has spent thousands of years in subterranean conditions, that they would kind of like the skin pigmentation and the eyes and so forth and the hair color would kind of like change to adapt to those environmental conditions. So that's what has happened, and that they are also helping the and whistleblowers like Corey Good coming forward. In fact, one of these inner Earth civilizations, and a kind of Nordic inner Earth group called the Anshar, was the group that actually helped Good by taking him to Antarctica, not once, but at least 2 times, where he's been given a tour of, firstly, the advanced military-industrial bases down there in Antarctica that are building these enormous spacecraft for the kind of Nazi or the corporate space fleets. And so Good was able to see those and has reported about them and their locations. But also in January, as I mentioned a little earlier, he was taken to the areas where these excavations are being conducted, and he was exposed directly to some of these artifacts that are going to be revealed very soon. But he saw the portion that had not yet been accessed and filtered or sanitized of the extraterrestrial elements. So we know from Corey Good, what's really down there, and he's been helped by these kind of inner Earth Nordic groups.
Well, I want the listening audience to know that this is not out there whatsoever. I want you to go and use your search engine and do a search for Space Battle Labs. You will find the United States Space Force, you will find .gov.mil, and you will find Space Factions and Space Battle Labs, all very official. So, I hope people will go out and do their homework. So often we're stuck in this belief bias, and if it doesn't fit what you already believe, we're not going to look into it. But you will find that there is this official, open, front-faced space warfare program going on. But then there is this black budget secret space program going on. So I just wanted the audience to know that they could go and search and see that there are Space Battle Labs already, having their own websites with .mil websites. Now, one thing I wanted to get to about the inner Earth situation, as I was looking into things, well, folks, I wanted to say one more thing. 2 weeks ago, I had mentioned that you want to follow my Space War News section on freemantv.com because you want to really keep up on the understanding of green fireballs and sonic booms. And then if you are following me on Twitter, you'll see that I immediately tweeted a green fireball in Indonesia and sonic booms in San Diego. So I'm like, come on, I told you this last week. Here it is. So a couple of things I wanted to get to you with you at Dr. Salla is this idea of these mysterious sonic booms that are going on, the green fireballs. But then also there was a UFO over a volcano in Mexico, and I know you're currently watching lava erupt there in Hawaii. And when I went to do a search on the UFO for the volcano, I found endless examples. I mean, this whole UFO volcano connection thing. So green fireballs, sonic booms, and volcanoes, inner Earth, extraterrestrials. Anywhere you want to go with that, Dr. Salla?
Well, there's so much that is happening out there that people are detecting. The sonic booms, people using kind of like the infrared night scopes to look at battles in the sky.
Now I did that. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I did that with James Gilliland at the East Eddy Ranch, and man, it looked like a highway up there, folks. I saw all night long. You would hear people out at the ranch go, oh my God, and I saw a green orb come flying by while I had the infrared goggles on. I've witnessed this stuff, Michael. I know there's more going on here, and I'm just so excited to talk to you.
Right. Well, there's, just so much happening out there. And, part of it is a kind of military, part of it is a kind of diplomatic process, negotiations that are underway. Corey Good and also Bill Tompkins, to a certain extent, have kind of shared a little bit about this. Corey in particular has said that he has been a part of the negotiations that began in earnest in March of 2015, and that these negotiations they go through different phases, hot and cold. That sometimes there are kind of agreements that are reached, and then the agreements kind of like come to an end, and there's a kind of uptick in military hostilities. He described, for example, in early 2016, that there was a major battle in Antarctica, basically over the Antarctica skies, where you actually had these huge kind of motherships that were belonging to the kind of to the Nazi military corporate kind of breakaway group trying to escape the Earth with a lot of the global elites that were intercepted and forced back down to Antarctica, that they weren't allowed to escape. And I think part of that is, because the elites, the global elites, thought that they could, they've mismanaged the Earth for a long time. And when things looked like they were going to go south in a major way, they thought they could simply just leave on these huge motherships and thereby escape the kind of destructive Earth changes that they thought were inevitable. But by being forced back to land and go back down into Antarctica, essentially, they weren't allowed to do that. And the message there was that the fate of the Earth is something that they are going to have direct. They're going to directly experience themselves. So that means that they just can't allow things to disintegrate and blow up. So they have a direct interest in this. So I think what we're seeing here, in terms of all of these things, the loud sounds, the sonic booms, the kind of like the battles that people are seeing through these night vision scopes, a lot of the kind of UFO sightings, the anomalies that are now coming up on Google Earth, all of this is part of this accelerated disclosure process now, where people are going to be brought up to speed because the truth is coming out, and it's either going to come out because there's a negotiated kind of process that has been agreed to, or because one of the sides, in this case the Navy's kind of disclosure initiative is going to win. And I think that's where we could look at someone like Trump and say that I can't disclose this, but I know Trump is aware of the secret space programs. I know Trump has been following a lot of this information that goes through the alternative media, and and it's known, for example, that one of his advisors, Roger Stone, has been following the information that Alex Jones has been putting out through his side. But it goes much deeper than that. Trump is aware of this, and you can actually see it in the inauguration speech. I think there's a sentence in there that he had, which, when you look at it, it suggests that either this guy has been briefed about secret space programs informally, at least, or he's just incredibly intuitive to know about this. And he said, quote, during his inauguration, this is what he said: "We stand at the birth of a new millennium, ready to unlock the mysteries of space, to free the Earth from the miseries of disease, and to harness the energies, industries, and technologies of tomorrow." End quote. When you look at that sentence, it's like, how did this guy arrive at this conclusion? Either he knows about the secret space programs and the Navy's initiatives to kind of like disclose this, or he's just incredibly intuitive and is kind of like up to speed on what's coming down the pike. But I think Trump, for all of I don't think Trump is. He's not a black and white figure. I think he's very colourful, and I think that one of the benefits of a Trump administration is that I really am convinced that he is going to be the catalyst for a lot of this information to come through. And when you look at the people he surrounded himself with, he really has a war cabinet. He's got military generals. He's got generals occupying senior positions. His chief strategist is a naval officer, Stephen Bannon, who actually was an advisor of the chief of naval operations in the early 1980s, late 1970s. So this is a guy that knows a lot of the secrets that the Navy is aware of, and say he is Trump's chief strategist. He's the guy that's telling Trump, advising Trump in terms of, let's go with this long-term strategy so that, you can release these things not only in a way that promotes national security, that also is good for the country, putting people back to work, but also ensures your legacy so that you can be voted in for a second term. This is a former Navy officer. And then you look at other people, the head of the Secretary of Homeland Security, General Kelly, the Secretary of Defense, Mattis. All of those two guys are former Marines. I'm sorry, Mattis. Yeah, both of them are former Marines, and that again is under the Navy, Department of the Navy. So there you have Trump with the war cabinet, and I think he's assembled these people around him so that he could really release the truth as to what's going on.
That would be amazing. And yes, he's such a maverick that I really feel like anything could happen with him. I'm waiting with bated breath. I have to admit to the audience so that everyone will catch up on this, but the bloodlines that we're dealing with here, and this often plays a role in the extraterrestrial story as well. And we find that genealogy experts are saying that Hillary and Trump are 19th cousins from royal blood of King Edward III. So I just thought we'd get that little notice in there, because I do find a correlation so often with the bloodlines and the dealings with, extraterrestrials. Do you follow that sort of thing at all? Does that come up as a part of the study? Has it come your way?
I think, when we look at anyone that is very successful, to become a successful real estate magnate in New York, you got to have a lot of very strong qualities, and you got to deal with powerful people. And, immediately in New York, Trump, for better or worse, he would have had to deal with the mafia. In New York, he would have had to learn, as well as his father, how to deal with this very powerful crime group, mafia, and how to deal with these people from a position of strength, so that you're not just steamrolled by them. And so this kind of comes into the whole thing of bloodlines. It's very possible that Trump, his bloodline is connected in some way to others, the Clintons or the royal family. It depends on how far back you want to go. But I think ultimately, one of the things about Trump and his bloodline is that he is used to dealing with powerful people and comes from a very kind of powerful family bloodline. So even though he is not directly a part of the kind of control system, I don't think he has played any role in the development of this secret shadow government, not only in the US but around the world, that has been kind of manipulating groups. But I think he is part. He is still comes from a powerful bloodline that can deal with that level of information. So in a sense, it's kind of like if you go back to, what was it, the 15th century, when you had the Vatican and the French Church eliminating the Freemasons, eliminating the Knights Templars, Jacques Molay, and what that involved was that you had one group of elites trying to eliminate another group of elites, but the defeated elites go underground. So in a way, Trump is kind of like that. I think he is aligned with a kind of group of elites that have been in the background, that have been biding their time for when they would have an opportunity again to kind of like,
Right.
reverse things and settle scores. And I think that's what we're going to see with Trump.
Fantastic. And disclaimer, folks, I'm a direct descendant of the King of Ireland. So, I wasn't trying to cast shade on him for that. But it is part of the puzzle and part of the picture that we're looking at here. And we're going to pick this up on the other side. I'm going to pick old Dr. Salla's brain about some of the artworks and exopolitical connections that I've come up with and get a little deeper into that. Meanwhile, just really digging deep into these topics and getting more and more into the global spectrum of this, because I really want to get your ideas on where this is going, since we seem to be in a space war with Russia and China, and I want to get your opinions on that and the other side. But before we end this broadcast, I wanted to know what you've got coming up, other than getting everybody over to the U.S. Navy's secret space program and Nordic Extraterrestrial Alliance. And I should mention, Dr. Salla, that when I went to exopolitics.org, the browser told me, please update to a modern browser, and I wasn't able to actually visit your website.
Right. Well, my website has been hacked over the last year, and I don't know if this latest problem is solely a result of outdated theme, which I'm hoping that's the problem, or whether it's because there is some sort of hacking that has been going on. But definitely, I've had a lot of problems in the past. But people can still. When you get that message at the very bottom, you can just kind of like click and ignore and access the article. So
Okay.
I encourage people to do that.
And so what's in your future here?
Well, at the moment, I'm concentrating on getting this book completed, getting it out into the public arena. So just doing the final touches on that. But I'm putting a lot of attention into these Antarctica, into the Antarctica information that is coming out, because I really feel that is the way in which a lot of this information is going to be revealed to the world, and so just kind of like trying to get the finer details sorted out and present that. So I don't know if that's just going to be more articles, or whether there's going to be a new book that is focused on the Antarctica discoveries, the secret history of Antarctica, and what what is about to be disclosed to the world.
It's absolutely huge, and this has been something that people have been looking into for so long, and to have it actually now start to surface is amazing. I'm so amazed at what we're going to deal with in the 21st century. Oh my God, if we ever get warp drive and the Vulcans show up and we have our first contact, that's going to be one hell of a day, isn't it, Dr. Salla? Well, I guess in your world, this has already occurred. I apologize.
Well, it's occurred for me personally, but it hasn't occurred yet for the world. And we all have the same issue where we might be open to this information, but we've got family members, parents, close friends who kind of look at us and think, are we crazy for buying into this stuff? And why aren't we pursuing conventional careers, holding real jobs? The whole story, yada yada.
Yes.
But I think what's going to happen is for the majority of humanity that thinks that way, their world is going to be turned upside down, and they're going to come to us and say, all these years you've been telling me this stuff, and I've been telling you, I've been thinking you're an idiot or wasting your time, and now it's like, wow, you were just spot on, and I have to catch up. Tell me what's going on.
Yes.
I think that's what's going to happen.
Oh, yes. That's a very familiar tune after decades of working at this, right? It does come out, folks, and we do stand on the birth of a new millennium, if I can quote the Trump, and we will be opening up the doors to infinite life, immortality, or even life extension, extraterrestrial travel. We could probably put to rest finally the flat Earth's dilemma. Sorry, I giggle at that one a little bit, but I'm just waiting to get suborbital so I can get up there, in my Virgin spacecraft and have a look down and just go, okay, yes, it's an orb. Or, it's a flat plane. Who knows? But I don't know because I haven't been in space yet, so I'm not willing to answer that question. Well, we're going to take this much further. I just love this topic because it's really near and dear to my heart. And like I say, I have so many weird connections to this story that I really want to kind of throw a few of my own personal experiences at Dr. Salla and get his reactions. And, maybe I'll become a subject of study for him. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, what do you think? So I was just finalizing my notes to make sure we gave everything to the big picture of this global spectrum to our listening audience here. I did want to mention the Astute class submarines, folks. Look into these. I mean, the world's largest submarines, and no one's really paying attention. And well, if you're going to start building this breakaway civilization, thinking you're going to escape in your motherships and finding out that it's not that simple, you're going to have to pay the piper, and we're all going to have to be down here together. This is the true collective that will occur when this information comes out, because we will be the ones that will be there to temper the reaction of the public because, well, this is almost old news for us, but it's not. It's so exciting, so huge. I can't believe what's going on in Antarctica. I never thought I would see this day myself personally, and I'm so excited to share it with people like Dr. Michael Salla. So we're going to take our break, and thank you all so much for tuning in, and please subscribe to freemantv.com because I need your help right now. I'm doing a bit of a fundraiser, see if I can't get myself into that television studio. So I will keep you all up to date on that. And, any way that you can support our efforts is greatly appreciated. Like I say, share, because the algorithm is limiting us everywhere we go. I'm on my 9th Facebook profile. I'm so tired of it. I Google myself. I can't even find my own work. It's, it's a war out there in this World Wide Web right now. So share to help everybody. That's, the minimal thing to do, but it's huge. And if you can, please send a donation or sign up and get all the great shows that we're putting out, or pick up the flash drive or anything that will help me right now, because I'm pushing right now so that I can make this show bigger, better, and bolder for all of you and get this message out to a much larger audience. So Dr. Salla, I will see you on the other side. Members, we'll see you there as well. The rest of you, we will see you all next week.